If you guys have watched any of my videos over the last couple of years, hopefully you know by now that I take a very honest and transparent approach to the way that I do business. I don't want to be that real estate guy who says, yes, now's a great time to buy, now's a great time to sell, the market's always great for somebody. I don't want to be that cliche real estate agent who's just trying to talk you into doing a deal so that I can get paid. I try to give people the best information I can and then help them make a decision that's best for their family. Sometimes that is buying, sometimes that is selling, sometimes that is going to be renting for a year or 2 years or 3 years, or maybe just not even doing anything at all, right? I'm going to help give you that information as best I can and try to be honest and transparent throughout that process. But there are some agents who are out there that are going to give you some information who I don't necessarily agree with. So in this video, we're going to kind of debunk some stuff. I'm going to give my insight on what's happening, what other agents are out there saying, and I'm also going to provide some context along the way. Now, this is not an opportunity for me to go out there and try to bash other agents or anything like that. In fact, this is the opposite. I'm just trying to build on that honest, transparent nature that I try to have in the real estate business and just give you my take on what's being said out there and what people are trying to tell you about, right? So we're going to jump on my screen here and it says, waiting for a housing market crash could cost you. Now, I will disclose that this article has been sponsored by a real estate team here in the area who is hoping to ultimately get your business, right? They're going to give you some facts, they're going to give you some information and try to say, hey, here's why you should ultimately end up purchasing a home. Please contact us. We'd love your business. I have to kind of refute that and say, hey, if you're looking at buying or selling real estate, make sure to reach out to me. I want to have your business. I hope that you find that my services are the right services for you and that you kind of trust me as a real estate agent and want to do business with me based on what I'm going to tell you. If you think that I'm the right fit for you, my information's here on the screen. Call, text, or email me anytime. I love hearing from you guys. And I cannot wait to hear from you when you do reach out to me about your situation. And we'll continue this conversation based on your own individual situation. So we covered a lot there. Let's jump in here and take a look at this. So it says there's certain things that you can wait out in life. You can wait for a storm to pass. You can wait for your favorite name brand jeans to go on sale. You can skip the movie theater and wait to stream that blockbuster at home in a few months. Now you can actually do it, same day in most cases. One thing you can't wait out is the housing market. Unfortunately, if you are hoping for a drastic change to current conditions, the only bubble that's about to burst is your own. Oh, that's kind of a hit to the chest there, right? Here's why the market isn't likely to crash anytime soon and why you might want to move up your plans to find that dream home. So they're first talking about inventory being low. Inventory is still low, 2,889 active listings in April of 2022 and 6,496 listings in April of 2023. Now, this is really important information because yes, listings are up drastically, up over double from where they were this time last year, but you still have to keep in mind that listings are actually lower than what they are in a normal, healthy market. Usually we want to be between 9 and 10,000 active listings, maybe even 10 to 11,000 active listings at any given time in a healthy market. That's what we saw from 2015 to 2019, give or take, a couple thousand here or there. Of course, it fluctuates throughout the year and whatnot, but we are generally at a much higher number than even this 6,496 that we're seeing here. So it's just one thing to kind of keep in mind there. There are still not enough houses, even though home building soared in Utah in 2021, putting the state on the national map for its housing boom. It made a decent dent in Utah's housing shortage, but not enough to erase it. We actually have a housing shortage. I just covered this on an article a couple of weeks ago. There's still about 30,000 houses of a shortage right now here in Utah. That means that there's 30,000 potential families, individuals, couples, people who are looking for a home that home doesn't exist, right? There's still people, there's way more demand than what is their supply in the market. So you might ask yourself, well, where are those people living, right? If they don't have a house, then where are they? Well, they're living with mom and dad. They're living with their brother. They're living in somebody's basement. They're living in, a trailer home. There could be a number of different places that they're actually living, but they're ultimately not living in a house or an apartment or a townhome. So something to kind of keep in mind there. That's what's actually driving a big part of this demand in the market. There's still a lot of people who want to buy homes. There's still a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting to jump into the market. And as soon as interest rates start to come down, we're going to see prices actually start to take off. So a lot of this is dependent on what happens with the overall economy, but specifically with interest rates. So this is actually talking about sellers. Sellers may not want to sell because they're locked into a low interest rate. This is what's known as a seller strike. They may only sell if they're desperate, which drives up the prices of homes that do come onto the market. Now, I don't know if I fully agree with this. I highlighted this in purple because I don't think I actually agree with this. If home sellers are desperate to get their home sold. That's actually going to drive prices down, right? If you have a lot of home sellers who come onto the market and they have to sell either because of, a bankruptcy, or they're getting divorced, or they're selling because they're moving out of state to take another job, or maybe they lost their job and can no longer afford payments, they're going to be very motivated, very desperate to sell their home. And that's actually going to drive prices down, because if that new home comes onto the market and there's other competition at that same price point, they're going to undercut the market to try and get their home sold quickly. And that's actually going to drive prices down. So I don't know that I fully agree with this. So you have to really kind of read into this and make sure you're getting the correct information along the way. It also says giving up a record low rate doesn't appeal to many homeowners. Based on a 30-year repayment schedule, a borrower who took out a $400,000 loan last year at 3% is paying $1,686 a month. If you borrow the same amount today at 7%, that would push your payment up $975 a month, which would be a 58% increase, which is just pretty crazy. Now, it also talks about home prices being likely to go up again. Although recent headlines show a decline in Utah home prices, that could change with normal seasonal fluctuations. An article by the National Association of Realtors reports every year, transactions and prices tend to be above trend in the summer, while activity typically slows down in the winter. Seasonality plays an important role in the housing market since it has an impact on the housing demand and supply. Now, this is true. We do generally see things start to pick up in spring and summer, and then even into fall, they're still pretty active. And then in the winter, it's going to drop off pretty substantially. So we're coming out of that. We're coming into the spring selling month, which is really going to help the market, or, I say help. It's going to liven up the market, if you will. There's going to be more homes getting listed, more homes selling, and you're going to see prices actually probably increase ever so slightly. In Utah, the demand still exceeds the available supply. We just talked about that a little bit. So let's come down here. Interest rates are still relatively low. This is something that I don't actually like hearing. I think this is something that's kind of a cop-out. I think it's something that, yes, when you compare it to interest rates that we saw in the 90s or even the 80s when interest rates were much higher, yes, that is true. But you have to keep in mind that prices were reflective of what those interest rates were back when interest rates were super high, right? If you look at home prices back in the 80s, prices were much lower and payments were much lower, right? Since the 1950s, we've actually been coming out of this pattern where people are able to afford living on just a single income for their entire household, right? There's more people working within the household to be able to make ends meet. And so prices have really reflected that. And now it's more common than ever to see that. So to actually go out there and say interest rates are still relatively low, yes, comparing to to a year ago, rates are double what they were, but they're still lower than they were, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Yes, that's true, but it doesn't reflect what's happening with prices. Interest rates have doubled, but that doesn't mean that home prices have come down enough to actually offset that. We're seeing an interesting dynamic right here where interest rates have now gone up. Prices have come down slightly, but they're still very high compared to where they should be based on what interest rates are today. If you even compare back to like 2005, 2008, 2012, when we saw interest rates in the 5 to 6% range, prices were still much lower. So even though, yes, wages have gone up a little bit, they're still not going up high enough to kind of offset this. So just my little rant there, but it just says here, when you compare interest rates today to what they were in 2021, they seem much higher. After all, rates fell to under 3% in 2020 and 2021. As of the second week of April, the current rate is 6.86%. Yes, that's a big jump from 3%, but rates are still lower than they used to be. This is something that really kind of bothers me. They say that the average interest rate since 1971 is 7.75%. So yes, interest rates are still lower than where they used to be, but the prices do not reflect that. So things are actually more unaffordable, more expensive today, even despite interest rates still being relatively low. The time for a housing market crash has passed. This is the last thing I want to talk about here. Anyone waiting around for the housing market to crash is going to be disappointed because that opportunity has already passed. Prices dipped slightly this winter, but things appear to be trending upwards. Since supply remains low and demand remains high, it's not likely that home prices will drop in the summertime. Yes, I do think that's true. I think that prices will probably remain mostly flat for at least the next couple of months, but you have to remember nobody can really predict what's going to happen. I think it's a little bit naive to say that the time for a housing market crash has passed because a couple of very important things have not quite happened to really determine what's going to happen in the economy and especially in the real estate market. So to talk about this a little bit further, when it comes to the housing market, prices have come down a little bit because nobody's willing to pay these extremely high prices with interest rates being where they're at. But the thing that's missing here is that most people who already own a home are still able to afford their home, either because they've got, a super low interest rate on their home or it's paid off, or they're still making a very high income and they're still willing to make their payment. They're willing to stretch a little bit more to make the payment on the home. If we start to see unemployment climb, if people start losing their jobs, people start losing their incomes, that's when we're really going to see home prices come down drastically. I think there's a very high likelihood that if we saw unemployment double from where it's at right now, that we could actually see home prices drop about 10 to 15% very, very quickly, because we're going to see a lot of that demand in the market fall out. We're going to see a lot of homeowners start to list their home. There's going to be a lot of competition. If we saw, another 5,000 homes come onto the market over the next week, that would be a lot of competition. You're going to have at least half of those home sellers who are going to undercut the market. They're going to undercut their neighbor. They're going to undercut the next person, and prices are going to drop very quickly at that point. So I actually think that more so than interest rates or anything else, even inflation or anything like that, I think that the important thing you have to look at here is what's happening with unemployment. Are people losing their jobs? Are people depleting their savings? Are they able to make their house payment on a monthly basis? And if they're not able to, that's when we're really going to see some trouble. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend, a family member, maybe a spouse who's interested in this type of information. And before you go, if you're looking at buying or selling real estate here in Utah, I would love to be your trusted real estate resource of choice. Call, text, or email me anytime. My information is here on the screen. And with that said, guys, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.